All right, Richard, here we go, man. Episode 1. All right, guys, welcome to Lift Others Up podcast here with Richard Oostra. And I'm just super excited, Richard, to have you here. Give you a quick intro, and then I'm going to talk about kind of how we came to know each other. But I'll let you talk about this a little bit yourself. But, if you look behind Rich there, it's the beautiful ocean. He's in a pod, which I definitely want to get into. Actually, I can see it rocking right now, which is just awesome. So, Rich is an entrepreneur. He's all about health, travel, faith, and mindset. And I've got to know this guy really well over the past 13, 14 weeks. And I'm just super excited to have you on, Rich. So, welcome to the Lift Others Up podcast.
Thanks, man. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, for sure. So, we've had some great conversations, and where I'd like to start is just kind of how we met, and then we can go from there. Does it sound good?
Yeah, sounds good.
Awesome. So we connected somehow through network marketing. We're with different companies, and I think I probably just started following you and friended you. And then I just went through a real tough season in life, health-wise, where I wasn't sleeping, had some breathing issues, and literally had about a 3-year period where I was getting about 45 minutes of sleep a night, and it was just wreaking havoc on my body and even worse, my mental and emotional state. And then I noticed on Facebook and Instagram, you started posting these pictures and some inspirational stuff about health, which was kind of a break from what I was used to seeing from you. And so that really sparked my interest, and I reached out to you, and we ended up connecting, and I kind of engaged you as my mentor for a 12-week program. And I kind of wanted to kick it off there because at one of the lowest points in my life, man, we connected, and you've been a godsend, man. I mean, the mentorship and the coaching through that season was just awesome, man. I needed all of it. So I appreciate you, and I know we're going to cover a lot of that. But if you don't mind kicking it off, like, how was that transition for you? And I'll also just kind of throw this out here. I know kind of one of our main connection points is our love of personal development. And I have a feeling that's all going to tie in as well. So if you want to start on personal development, or if you just want to start on when you made that shift over to concentrating not only on your own health, physical, mental, emotional, but helping others with that'd be awesome.
Yeah, so, I got started in business in 2014. I actually started a little construction company because I'd previously worked for my boss for like almost 4 years, building his company. And I got to the point where I'm like, I know how to run a business myself. At least I thought I did. So I started my own thing, and then transitioned within that first year, actually got completely out of that industry and into the insurance business because, I really have this thing where I just love talking to people. And, my friends around me were saying, you should be in marketing, sales, some type of, customer service type of, people business. So I jumped into the insurance industry, and then our company did a deal with the network marketing company to be a vendor for them. And that's how I got introduced to network marketing. And I had no idea what it was. And so I started, the beginning of 2014 in the financial business. And I got given a book that they said, you have to read this book in 30 days. And it was a personal development book. And it was published by, I believe it's the the Napoleon Hill Foundation. W. Clement Stone was the author. And that was my first introduction to personal development. And then over the last, almost 10 years, I've been able to, I guess it has been 10 years now, which is crazy. I've been able to, do personal development pretty much every day. I don't think I've really missed a day of reading or audios or plugging in information. And I'm really grateful for that. But here's the shift, or what really happened was, I'm a part of a company. I've been a part of a company for the last 5 years that teaches personal development and leadership and entrepreneurship as one of the education verticals. And, that really attracted me to that company, and it's allowed me to, even go deeper into the industry. But what I started to see, especially for myself, but for other people too, is that personal development gives you the knowledge, and it gives you the head knowledge, it gives you the formula for, changing your life. But there's this gap, and the gap is our own personal habits. It's our own personal day-to-day operations of, how we how we take care of us. Like I always tell people, like, people ask me, like, if anyone ever asks me for investing advice, I'll say, yeah, the first number one investment should be yourself. You should invest in yourself. And what I started to see with myself was, like, I could go to an event, or I could read a Bob Proctor book, or listen to a great, an audio or something. But if I don't have me right, if I'm not in alignment with my own habits and my own mental health, my mental state, my physical health, my physical state, my emotions, my body, my mind, all these different things, if they're out of whack and out of alignment, or if I'm run down in any way, how am I supposed to go and apply, you know, personal development, the law of attraction? Like, I heard a long time ago that the law of attraction is the secondary law. The primary law is the law of vibration. And if your vibration is off, if you're not on the right frequency, you're not on the right vibration, how are you going to attract the things you want into your life? And so that was the gap. And it's still there. It's just that I was able to close that gap through, really, I guess, the number one thing is accountability. I started realizing that I need to fall in love with accountability and discipline. And once I fall in love with accountability and discipline, and change my story around those two things, and change my meaning behind those two things to something that's positive and something that's uplifting for me, um, you know, that was the catalyst. And then once I, spent a few years really fine tuning my own daily method of operation and the habits that I was able to create, my life changed, and I transformed on the inside, the outside, and now, my mission that I'm on is to empower other guys to do the same thing. And that's how we ended up connecting, was just me posting. I'm on a sea pod right now, as you were saying, in the Caribbean, off the coast of Panama, in the Caribbean coast. And I was actually here that weekend when I made that first post. It was my birthday weekend. I came out here for my birthday, and I posted just, a little bit of my story, like, hey, here's what happened for me over the last few years. And, people started reaching out. And that was really when I realized, I need to look outside of just of me and how I can, get to my goals. But I need to look at, how do I help other people, and how can I put something together that can be simple to and easy to follow, but at the same time, it only works through that accountability, and it only works through the system of, okay, I'm going to create these habits, and through those habits, those healthy habits, that's where I'm going to be able to become that person that I need to be in order to get to where I want to go. So I feel like it's closing that gap in personal development, but it's also, it's something that is so much bigger than that. It's really, getting ourselves into alignment.
That's awesome. Yeah, man. I hear people talk about closing the gap between intentions and practices, and I think that's where it's at. A lot of people, they actually know what they should be doing, right? What they intend to do, but they're not doing it. And I think that's where, you're talking about accountability and discipline really is what closes that gap. So that's been huge for me with our experience, like reporting. There's that old saying, whatever's measured improves, and whatever's measured and reported improves exponentially. It's that reporting part, it's that accountability part that I think makes the big difference, right?
100%. It's interesting because I mean, for me, the biggest thing was, I needed someone to be accountable to. And so I just used my Instagram. I just posted on my story every day when I started my journey, years ago, of me doing my 100 push-ups a day, or me, if I told people, like, hey, I'm cutting out alcohol for 3 months, I was posting, I'm, making sure not to, like, I think sometimes people get they they kind of go through phases, right? Where it's like, oh, he's just doing that for right now, or I'm doing 90 days of this, or I'm doing 3 months of this, or whatever. But for me, it was like, if I didn't post it, or if I didn't actually find a way to create accountability, then it was the same with 75 hard. I was doing 75 hard, and I would post screenshots of what day I was on, and sometimes like a workout or whatever, because I knew that it needed, we need that. And I guess back to what I was saying earlier, I used to have a negative view of accountability because I grew up in in call it the religious environment, the church environment, where and the only reason I say use the word religious is just because there were rules, there were standards that were expected to be upheld, and accountability to me was something that I heard about as a young kid, or growing up in that environment, as we're going to make sure that you should have an accountability partner to make sure that you're not doing something bad, or you're not doing something you shouldn't be doing. And that's fine. I mean, that's literally the purpose of accountability. But at the end of the day, I had to change my story around that to like, accountability is freedom, it's power, it's having somebody else to lean on, it's having somebody to talk to that's going through doing the same things you're doing. And that gives you a lot of that can give you a lot of motivation when you need it, and it can also remind you of like why you're doing it, and you see other people doing the same things you're doing. It's very liberating. So that was really the biggest thing for me, was just changing my story around that, and then also changing my story around discipline, because I also used to have a negative view of discipline. I used to think discipline was punishment. And I heard Bob Proctor say on an audio one time, I was in an airport. I think I was in Denver, and I was in an airport about to board a plane on a layover. And I was listening to Bob on YouTube, and I think he was doing a talk at GoPro, one of the GoPro events. It was a network marketing conversation that he was having, but he said, discipline is not negative. Discipline is an act of self-love. And if you start to fall in love with discipline, it means you love yourself enough to do the things that you should be doing. And I was like, man, that was like a paradigm shift for me. It was like my paradigm just totally shifted to, wow, like what disciplines can I create, and how excited I started to get around that. And then that was a big moment too, for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I know mindset is big for you, and it's interesting as you're talking. There's three things I thought about there. One is you use social media, right? We talked about accountability, and we talked about discipline, and all three of those can have kind of super negative connotations, right? Like a lot of people right now are just down on their social media experience. They're doom scrolling is this new term I'm hearing, which I think a lot of people are guilty of. You're just scrolling through the next reel, wasting all this time. Accountability, a lot of people think about like having a boss, and that's not a good feeling, right? And so accountability is negative. And then discipline, for a lot of people, it just got a negative connotation because of their life experience, right? They think of discipline as being disciplined, like for doing something wrong. And so it's funny how you talk about that paradigm shift, or just changing your mindset to see these things that maybe have a negative light cast on them, but that can be incredible tools for transforming our lives, right? And I think social media is a great example of that too. There's so much negative on social media, right? And there's what's cool is I was working with Justin Prince, and he was telling me you control and narrate your social media experience, right? So a lot of people are like, it is what it is, and this is the content I'm getting, and it's like, well, you can really control that by who you follow, who you're friends with, what you're clicking on, what you're looking at. And so I think it's really cool and admirable that you took something like social media and morphed that with accountability, and use that as your accountability to really change, your not only your mindset, but your discipline, your body, your mental health, all those things, man. And I definitely want to spend some time there in kind of mental and emotional health, because with that experience I had with not sleeping, man, it was tough. And when your mental and emotional health are down, it's really hard to have the motivation, or just the, I don't even know what you call it. I was just in such a funk all the time. So again, getting a hold of you and chatting with you, and just kind of jumping right in. I mean, we had that first conversation, and I'm not even sure if I was ready for it, but there was just something that was like, just do it, man. And I heard recently Ed Milet say something really powerful. I've never heard this before. He said the transformation is in the transaction. And I was like, man, So he explained that. He said the
Yeah.
transformations in the transaction, because when you spend that money, when you make that commitment, when you enter into that transaction, you're making a statement, right? That you want to change, that you believe in yourself, and that you're actually gonna follow through. And so I thought that was super powerful. So I definitely felt that. I felt some of that transformation in the transaction, and then the experience itself was just awesome. Like I said, working with you and kind of building up not only my strength physically, but building up that mental toughness and getting my emotions and my mental back going, man. Because it was rough. So I'm feeling great. I'm firing on all cylinders, man. And I just want to again thank you. I'll probably thank you a couple more times on the podcast here, but I just appreciate you, man, for helping pull out of that. You know what I'm saying?
Dude, you're welcome. And I mean, you look great. You sound great. I mean, I remember that first conversation, and it's crazy how I think, somebody said this to me the other day, or actually, yeah, it was just in the last 48 hours, somebody said to me, I don't really have a painful past or a painful story or a traumatic background, that I could use to help other people. And I said, dude, I didn't even realize what I was going through 3, 4, 5 years ago until someone showed me a picture of that person. And I saw, because I didn't have those pictures on my phone. Somebody sent those photos to me. And I'm like, wow, like I didn't realize how bad things were. And we don't sometimes realize how bad or how run down we are or the state that we're in until, a few years later you look back and you go, man, like, or looking back, everything is 2020, right? And it's crazy. I think one thing I believe is, you know, whatever we're seeking is also seeking us. And if it's like I was thinking about this too, because I'm like, man, we're about to hop on and have a conversation. I'm like, you and I have never met in person. I feel like I know you super well. I feel like, I mean, I love talking to you. I love hanging out on the phone and having calls with you. And I feel like, the universe just brought us together. Like God just brought us together through, you needed something, and I was just willing to finally be vulnerable and talk about my journey on social media. And then that was just a moment where it was like we just connected. And yeah, man, it's been cool to watch your growth, and obviously for you to, like you said, you're building up your strength. And that's a whole other topic. I posted about this, I think yesterday, about the world is trying to rob us of our strength right now. The world's trying to rob us of our power, especially as guys. Like they want us to be run down, tired, anxious, not in shape, no endurance, no mental toughness, mental capacity. Like they just want us to be passive. And I think that goes back to what you were saying about social media. Is social media can be used, I think it's just like anything. It can be used for good, or it can be used for negative. And I was that kid, years ago. I think I got my first Facebook account in, like, I think it was like 2007 or 2006. I got on Facebook. And for years, man, I was just go on there, compare my life to everyone else, try to figure out, what other people were doing, and it was kind of like this escape or this distraction. And I still really have to limit my time on social media as far as, like, how much I'm on there. And there's apps you can get, like the Kill Newsfeed app and stuff like that, where you go on Facebook, you don't see your feed,
Hmm.
that kind of stuff. But I made this commitment about, I would say, probably when I got into the insurance business, and especially when I got into network marketing, when I started doing personal development, it was around that time I really made a commitment to myself. Like, I'm going to post positive stuff on social media every day. And every day there's the occasional day I miss where if I'm traveling, or I just don't have time, or whatever. But probably 6 days a week for the last 10 years, I've tried to post something positive on social media. And you just never know who's going to read that, man. You just never know who needs to see that, or what, impact that's going to have. And, it is a negative world out there, and there's so many distractions. And I think we, as this community, especially this community that you're building, that's going to be, listening to this podcast, like, take the time to post positive stuff online, because we need to see that stuff, and you never know when someone needs that encouragement or needs some hope or needs some inspiration. And it's beautiful, man. We can make a difference in the world even in a small way like that, and you just never know who's on the other end of it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's powerful. And you were talking about hopping on Facebook in the beginning there, social media, and comparing your life to other people's lives. And I heard a quote like, "Comparison is the thief of joy," right? Which I thought was interesting because no matter where we're at, we can always look up and like see somebody else. And I heard Ed Milet the other day talking about this accumulation culture. I don't know if you've heard this conversation, but so many people are just kind of trying to accumulate, right? Accumulate wealth or accumulate things or cars or clothes or whatever it might be, and they get caught up in accumulation and think somehow that that's going to fulfill them, or once they have this thing that they'll feel differently or better. And as I'm sure the both of us have experienced, that's not where you get fulfillment. And the best way I've heard it put is between Tony Robbins and John Maxwell. Tony Robbins says progress is happiness. John Maxwell says growth is happiness, and they say fulfillment comes through service to others, right? And so serving others is where it's at, and that's has nothing to do with accumulation, other than working on ourselves, accumulating knowledge, getting better, and then turning around and lifting other people up. So we call this the Lift Others Up podcast. And I feel like this
I
kind of
love it.
accomplishes both, because if we're working on ourselves, then we can turn around and share what we're learning and what we're experiencing with other people, not from a standpoint of like, I think I'm better than somebody, but a standpoint of, hey, I'm working on myself. I'm trying to better myself. The lessons I'm learning, the people I'm meeting and speaking with, the books I'm reading, all these different things that we're soaking up, we can turn around and share that information with other people and help lift others up as well. So that's what we're doing, man.
No, I love it. It's interesting that I mean, I love how you're following Ed Milet, and some of the stuff that he's been talking about has been extremely powerful for me as well. And one thing that I always think about that he said, your confidence should come from your intentions. And if we have good intentions, around, like you said, instead of you just growing and learning, like be a river, not a reservoir, like let that information flow. And it's just that flow of information from one person to the next. It's so incredible how we can pass these things down and we can pass them on to other people. But I'm just grateful for the people in my life that have coached me and mentored me as well, and given me the opportunity to, believe in myself. I think the biggest thing I've gotten from mentors is and coaches and just people that I've studied successful people. It's given me the opportunity to believe in myself. It's made me, you know, it's made me crazy enough to believe that I could do it.
Yeah.
I think that's what it is. And so, yeah, man, it's really, especially in this time right now that we're in. I know a lot of people are focused on, you know, weather events or wars or, the election or who's going to get into office or all these different things, you know, that's going on. It, I think the number one thing that we as guys, especially, like I speak to a lot of men every day, it's like we need to focus on controlling the controllables. Like, what are the things that we can control, and not focusing on the things that we can't control, because there's so much of these things that we focus on and we think about and we spend our mental energy and our capacity on, we have zero control over. But if we can focus on, hey, you know what? Did I work out today? Did I eat enough protein? Did I drink my water? Did I get into a state of gratitude? Did I get into some meditation? Did I start focusing on my vision of the future and not, the memories of the past? Like, did I get myself right and get myself into alignment? And if I did, and if I have done that, then I can go make a change in the world by, impacting the things that are under my control, whether that's my team or my family or, you know, my partner or the people that I'm with, being present with people. And I think it's just that awareness. Like, you've obviously come to a very high state of awareness around this stuff, being in the industry and being I mean, you're a mentor to other people, you're a leader as well. And like, you've increased your awareness of like, hey, I need to impact people in a positive way. And not that you need to, but it's like you get to do that and you want to do that. And I mean that's why you're I think why you told me you want to do this show is like you want to bring that value to people. So increasing our awareness, is so big as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. And when you're talking about focusing on things we can change, it always reminds me of the serenity prayer, which I think is so powerful. So it's God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So obviously, that there's wisdom in what you're saying. There's wisdom in saying, okay, what can I actually control? What can I focus on, and what can I work on changing? And then having the courage to go do that. And so some of these things are like it's like ancient wisdom, you know what I mean? And it sounds so simple, but it's when it's applied that it can just have profound impact. So as you see me glance into the side here, I got some notes up. So just want you to know that's what's going on. And one thing I wanted to make sure we touched on as we're talking about things you can control, as we're talking about mindset, as we're talking about lifting others up, is what you shared with me about self love and kind of these steps of how you actualize that.
Yeah, the self-image formula.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so that came from, I was living in Panama City, beautiful apartment, going outside, doing my push-ups, by the pool or in the park or getting out, doing my run, my walk. And I started to, as I find that my mind, I have this saying, it's when your body moves, your brain grooves. And it's like I do my best thinking and my best creative thought happens when I'm either working out or moving my body. So I'm out there one day and I'm thinking about like my self-image, right? How I used to think of myself as like when I was growing up, man, I thought of myself as like I'm a skinny kid with zits on my face and I wasn't good enough to make it into, pro hockey. I wasn't, which was my dream. I wasn't good enough to, I didn't graduate college. Like I had this story about myself where I was like, I'm not good enough. And my self image was always like this lack of self worth. And so as I was out there one day, I'm working out and I have this thought that comes into my head and I'm like, it's the work that I'm not doing that's keeping me from changing my self image into the person that, because there would be days, this as an entrepreneur, right? There's days where if you don't do anything, you still get paid.
Yeah.
Like everything's still good. And I realized like, okay, the work is what instills the self-worth. So if I want my self-worth to go up, so I went home, I took out I had this big poster paper and this big Sharpie. I had a thick Sharpie marker and this huge poster paper. And I wrote out like a flip chart. I wrote out self-work. And I just put work and then I added the self. So self work and then I put self worth. So the self work increases the self worth. The self worth increased self worth equals increased self esteem. So most men out there are struggling with a lack of self esteem, right? I was on a plane the other day and I read in the magazine, the airplane magazine, there was a dating a matchmaking company, and one of the things they said on their full page ad was that 40% of women in America haven't been on a date in the last 90 days. And I'm thinking the only reason that could be is because men are just, they don't have confidence, they don't have self-esteem. They're like, if these women are not going on dates, like that's a problem, right? That's a problem in the men in the world. But anyways, self-work, self-worth, self-esteem, and then self-confidence, like we talked about with the intentions, like what Ed said. But for me, my self-confidence grows as well when my self-esteem is high, when I feel good about myself. And then from the self-confidence, that's where the self-image changes on the end of that formula. So you got to do the work, then your self-worth increases, then your self-esteem, your self-confidence, and then your self-image changes. And that for me was just this really beautiful kind of realization. I feel like God just kind of gave me this download one day of like, okay, here's how you do it. Because, I've read a lot and I've heard a lot of good speakers and good, people in this space talk about your self-image. Like if you don't see yourself as a millionaire, you'll never be a millionaire. If you don't see yourself as someone who's ripped and shredded, you'll never be ripped and shredded, you know? And I realized like, well, how can I see myself that way if I don't feel worthy of it? If I don't have the confidence, the self-belief, the self-confidence to actually get there or to actually change myself and become that person. And it all starts with the work. So that's while I was doing that 100 push-up challenge, 100 push-up a day challenge, the 90-day challenge, I came up with that, and then that, you know, was kind of this catalyst for me where I was like, okay, I'm gonna lean into this, and then, you know, from there it was, you know, really building the habits over the last few years to get myself, you know, to where I mean we are today, which is, you know, we're still on the journey. Like the journey never ends, you know, but the self improvement and all of that, I think that it can give you a lot of peace of mind. Like I think sometimes it goes back to the whole comparison thing. It's like we're always comparing ourselves to other people. We're always comparing ourselves to, oh, this person makes this much money, or this person has this type of, you know, this person's this percent body fat and I'm over here, or this person's doing this and I'm over. It's like you kind of you have to go, okay, well, what do I do to combat that? And I think that, you know, it's comforting to know, for me at least, and I know for other guys that I've talked to now, it's like if you're doing the work, if you're doing the self work every day, if you're hitting your daily wins and you're stacking those daily wins, you are going to feel worthy. You are going to have higher self esteem. Your confidence is going to go up. And the byproduct is you're going to see your self image in the future as that person that you want to become. And it's so powerful, man. And it's so freeing and liberating to know that, okay, all I got to do is make sure I'm doing the work. And a lot of that work is here, right? But a lot of that work is also, hey, let me hit the gym today. Let me make sure I eat the right way. Let me make sure I'm, you know, doing the personal development and all those other things. And so that's the formula.
That's really cool, man. So I don't know if it's something you said or just how I processed it the first time you shared that, but it's kind of making sense now. So I titled that self love, which is actually not one of them. But what's interesting is I feel like that's a formula for loving yourself, right?
No,
And
the self love is the top one above the self work. It's the self love. That's
okay,
that's
self
that's
love.
the
Yeah,
first one. Yeah.
gotcha. Okay, perfect. And what's interesting is as you're talking about this, I was thinking about self image being the final one, and how we're created in the image of God, and God is love, right? It's like all these things, the Imago Dei, right, in His image, and it's just like all these things tie in. When you get deep, man, it's pretty cool. I wanted to touch on, you talked about it early, like the law of attraction, and I want to share something and then kind of get your take on it. So I think we've read a lot of the same books. Like that book you referenced in the very beginning was that Think and Grow Rich.
No, the one that I
Oh,
got prescribed to read.
the Napoleon Hill book. Yeah.
So it was by W. Clement Stone. It's actually called The Success System That Never Fails, but it was
Oh,
published by the Napoleon Hill Foundation. Yeah.
gotcha. Okay, very cool. I'll have to check that one out. Before we go, I'll get some more book recommendations from you because that's always something I'm looking for. I got several behind me here, but we'll get to that in a little bit. But I wanted to talk about the law of attraction because I remember when I was first introduced to it, I was interested in the idea, but it sounded kind of whimsical, right? It was almost like, all right, this stuff's a little bit out there. But once I heard somebody explain it like more scientifically, for me anyways, that's when it started to be like, all right, this kind of makes sense. So when I heard law of attraction, like, you can just attract these things just by thinking about it. And what the way it made more sense to me was when I heard somebody talk about the RAS, the reticular activating system, right? And the way it was explained to me was if you have a focus, your mind creates a file for that thing. And once you have a file for it and a focus, you see it everywhere. It's like when you decide to buy a car, and let's say you're looking at a Jeep Wrangler, right? All of a sudden, once you've made that decision, you're thinking about Jeep Wranglers, you see them all over the place. Everywhere you look, there's Jeep Wranglers everywhere. They were
Yeah.
already there, but now that you've created that file, now that you have that focus, you were kind of saying earlier, like what you focus on, you find, right? And so when it was presented in that way, and then I've heard Ed Milet talk about thought stacking, how powerful your thoughts are. And so there's things that are probably true, but don't serve you to think about or believe. right? This blew my mind. So even if something's true about you that's maybe not positive, if you think about that and you believe that, that's going to have no positive impact on your life. But if you can flip that around and say, you know what, I am good at this, or I'm going to be great at this, and start having a positive flip on that. Once you hold a positive thought for, he said, like 15, 20 seconds, other positive thoughts start to stack on top of that, and you can just change that whole trajectory, which I thought was amazing.
No, I love that. It's interesting. We're not doing a commercial for Ed Milet on this podcast,
Right.
by the
Yeah.
way, but we both
It,
have been so impacted by him, I think, and
yeah.
it's beautiful, man. I saw him speak live in. Have you seen him speak live before?
I haven't. I just saw an advertisement for something he's doing at his house.
Okay,
Yeah, yeah. So
okay.
I'm not ready to kick out 25K to go to that, but yeah, tell me about it.
Well, I went to Alex Morton's event in Miami called Break the Code, and that's the first time I saw Gary Brecka speak live, Grant Cardone, Ed, and Ed was there, and he was without a doubt, um, like he has such a gift of moving a crowd through taking them through this emotional experience while he's on stage, and in 1 hour, it was just incredible. And anyways, what you're saying about the RAS, it's so funny because it's crazy how true that is and how much that shows up in my life. Like I have this thing with the eights.
Yeah,
I've
I've
got the
seen that.
888 thing going on,
Yeah,
which for years this number has been following me around, and I googled it, and it has a very cool meaning, about new beginnings and abundance, and all these different things, which has been kind of the story of my life. But my birthday is the 8th day of June 1988, so my birthday has three eights in it. But this number, like, from I rent an apartment and the only apartment available is apartment 8, or I someone sends me a bill and it's $880, or I go to a restaurant and I get table 8. I'm paying my tab at the coffee shop, and it's like 8. It's just it's over and over. But the interesting thing about it is God, I believe, speaks to me as well through numbers. And this is a whole, people can research this, but it's crazy if you look at the significance of numbers. But my RAS is completely tapped into the number 8 right now, and I see it everywhere. And so maybe we need to dive into that a little deeper and figure out how to, whatever our goals are, right? It's like, that's why you make a vision board and a dream board, or that's why I have a yacht on the background of my phone, because my dream is to have one of these solar yachts one day. It's always been my, the last, I don't even know how long ago I set that goal, but it's like, I know if I see that every day, I'm just going to one day, I'm going to wake up and I'm going to be out there on that boat. And it's crazy how our mind works, and it's beautiful to unpack it, man, because I look at like what we learn in school. Like, can you imagine if you had Ed Milet as a teacher in high school, or you had a proctor, or like somebody that could just teach you things that you could actually use, versus, we learn so much just useless crap in school that we never learn, we never use, because we're learning stuff that we're never going to be able to apply. And I think that's what you said earlier, is like, it's like you have the knowledge, and then it's, you know, applying it and actually being able to put it into practice and put it into motion. And yeah, man, it's interesting, like the way that we're waking up and have woken up, but now, you know, understanding there's just this unlimited supply of powerful, like you said, like these timeless truths that are out there, and things that we can tap into, that now it's like we know this stuff. You and I are talking about the RAS, but the average person out there has no clue about this stuff yet, because they haven't learned it, but it's free information.
Yeah, that's a great point. Sometimes I think when you've been in the personal development or leadership development game for a while, you forget how some of the stuff that impacted us most when we first got started is old to us now, but is just profound to people that have never heard of it, which is most people, right? So you hear somebody say something that sounds basic to you, and you're like, yeah, I've heard that a million times, and then somebody that has no idea listens to it and they're like, oh my gosh, man, that was amazing, you know. So on that yacht, man, you know what they say. I've heard that the only thing better than having a yacht is having a friend with a yacht, and so I hope you get that thing too, man. So I can come hang out with you out there.
Let's make it happen.
Let's do it. All right, I'm counting on you. Um, so let's hit some books real quick. So you already gave us the one book title. Where else did you start, either book wise or let's hit books, mentors, audios, different things you've listened to that have had a profound impact on you early on or even now?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, one of the most inspiring people, and he doesn't get a lot of press. He's passed away now, but his name's W. Clement Stone, and he started the insurance company that I worked for. That was really where I cut my teeth, as they say, in business. But there's a guy, the gentleman who wrote Chicken Soup for the Soul. He also worked for that same insurance company.
Was that
There
Jack
was some
Canfield?
Canfield, yeah.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of people over the years in that. There's a lot of turnover in that business, right? Like people do it for 5 years and they're on to something else. But in that time that I was there for those few years, I studied this guy. I mean, he started with like 10 cents in his pocket as a kid delivering newspapers and was able to build himself into, this billion-dollar empire. But he worked for and with people like W. Clement or Napoleon Hill, and eventually, people like Earl Nightingale, and then like Bob Proctor worked with those guys as well, with the Earl Nightingale, and those guys, those types of individuals that basically started the personal development space. And when I started reading these books, like one of my favorite books is The Strangest Secret by Earl Nightingale. It's a 35 minute audio, somewhere in there. I always speed up my audiobooks a little bit so I can, get through them a little bit faster. And that's a fun, that's a fun fact for people too, is like when you're listening to audiobooks, your brain can process audio way faster than you can read words off a page. So you can get through books over and over and over. Like I've probably listened to The Strangest Secret, which the theme of that book is you become what you think about. I mean, that's essentially the whole theme of the book, but there's so many other nuggets and so much gold in there. But I probably listened to that book maybe 1,000 times on audio. It's 30 minutes, So I mean, I made a habit of every morning I'd wake up and I'd put on that audio. Every morning I'd wake up, I'd put on that audio. And if I was driving, I'd put on that audio. And it's so funny because all these guys that have kind of been in that chain, right? From like Dale Carnegie to, Napoleon Hill to, Nightingale, Bob Proctor. Now the new the guy that's carrying on their legacy in our generation is Alex Morton, who I've actually been working with in network marketing for 5 years. And we talk all the time. And he was kind of, he was the one that Bob Proctor handed the torch to, because Bob unfortunately passed away during COVID. And it's just crazy when you think about that lineage and then that type of information. It's kind of all in the same vein, but it's really, I believe, has been the most powerful information for me to study. And when we talk about books, I remember Patrick Bet-David's a guy that I follow, and I absolutely have so much respect for, and I love his story, and I love what who he is in the world, his voice and everything that he brings to the world. But he talks about on his website, he has this, like, I think it's 100 books. And he posted a picture. I remember going on his website and there was literally a picture of 100 different covers of 100 different books. And he's like, these are the top books for entrepreneurs. And that was kind of where my head was at. And then I started studying Bob Proctor, because I saw Bob Proctor speak live twice, once in Dallas and once in London, at conventions. And I saw him, speak live, and he drew these lines on the screen called the lines of vibration. And it's basically just a slide with these horizontal lines. And he said, you're here and what you want is here, and you need to change your vibration and your frequency. And I never heard anyone teach that before. But as I started studying Bob and really diving into his stuff as well, because him and Earl Nightingale work so closely together, I really started loving his information. He said that you should not read 100 books one time. You should read one book 100 times. And I think that that was a revelation to me as well, because well, I know it was because as I've been able to hear the same information over and over and over, it finally kind of gets through, because I got a bit of a thick skull, right? Like I'm a little bit hard headed when it comes to, like, I wasn't good in school. I was very distracted in school. I was just really focused on like chasing girls and playing hockey. You know what I mean? Like I wasn't there to get good grades. I didn't even care if I got good grades, like to be honest. And when I hear something once, you hear something once, or you hear someone say something once, it's like you may retain 10% of the information. But for me, it's been The Strangest Secret. I've read so much. Bob Proctor's books, like Change Your Paradigm, Change Your Life. Last month, I probably listened to that book like 10 times. Some very powerful stuff in there. And it's all the same information, and it's all the same, they all say it in a different way. They all present it in a different way, but they were all taught the same things. And the people that they were taught by were taught the same things back to, the origin of the industry of personal development. So I've just kind of stayed in that lane. I haven't ventured too far out of there, because I know that, I need to really get this stuff into my subconscious and in deep down inside. I don't want to miss anything, like I don't want to glaze over, oh, I read this once and now I got it. So that's something that I've done that I would encourage people to do as well, is like find the theme, or if you don't know where to start with The Strangest Secret, but find that vein of information and then stay there for like 5 years.
Yeah.
Don't try to read 100 books. Not saying Patrick Bet David was wrong, but that guy has probably read thousands of books, and I mean I'm sure he believes the same things deep down when it comes to, you got to get that repetitive, that constant state repetition. I think he's one of those guys that he's an expert on 1,000 things. Like
Yeah.
he's way smarter than me. I'm just telling you what's worked for me really, really well, and seems to be something that I can keep coming back to. It's like, you don't, you read the Bible, for example, right? Which is also where a lot of this personal development comes from, is it all stems from the Bible, which I didn't realize either till, maybe a couple of years ago. But someone told me one time, they're like, when you read the Bible, and every time you read it, or you could be Think and Grow Rich, could be anything, but it's like, oh, I've never read that before. It's like you almost see it for the first time, but you've read the same. It's because you're not the same person. You're not the same person that you were when you read it the last time, or the time before. You've grown and you've expanded your awareness, which I love that about reading and studying.
No, man, I think that might be the pro tip of this whole podcast is, there's you can read 1,000 books, but it's really about studying, right? It's like, if you're not reading to learn, and you're just reading to get a title under your belt, you might put that book in the shelf and 6 months later not remember anything, you know. But if you read to study, and you read to get better, and you lock in, and I think Bruce Lee said, "I don't fear the man that knows 10,000 kicks. I fear the man that's done the same kick 10,000 times." Something like that. But it's the same principle. It's right. It's right. Like committing this stuff to memory, having it become a part of who you are and how you think. And that doesn't happen by listening to something once, or reading it once, or even twice. It's really sitting with it, and experiencing it. So that's awesome, man. Have you listened to a lot of Jim Rohn?
I have.
Yeah.
I just stumbled upon, probably 2, 3 weeks ago, I stumbled upon this really cool playlist on Spotify. I'll send it to you after, or you can even put it in the show notes in the description. It's like hip hop instrumentals with Jim Rohn talking. Someone who's great with mixing and creating that type of a vibe. You think of Jim Rohn and you're like, oh, this dude with white hair from like 100 years ago, but like the guy he dropped so many bars in his day, man. Like he would get up and he would just say stuff, and you're like, dude, like, I mean, some of the stuff you can even get away with now, because the world has changed a lot. But like,
Yeah.
he just goes off about like, if you need to do this, or you're gonna be you're gonna be sick. and broke and stupid the rest of your life. Like he would talk like that, you know what I mean? But when
Yeah.
you hear it with the hip hop beats, it's like it's kind of fire. I put it on at the gym and stuff too.
Oh,
So
dude, I need that for sure. I'm glad you brought that up because I was going to ask you when it comes to working out, if you're doing music or if you're doing personal development. I think I just got the answer. You're doing a little bit of both there. That sounds sweet. I remember probably one of the first things I heard him say was, if you want things to change, you have to change. And if you want things to get better, you have to get better. And that really speaks to this idea of taking responsibility for wherever you're at in your life. And I've talked about this before on calls and trainings where that can be really hard for a lot of people to process, right? Like wherever you're at, like basically it's your fault is what they hear. It's just like, no, if you take responsibility for where you're at and, where you're at in life and your accomplishments and your success, if you take responsibility for that and you're not happy with it, there's good news to that. And the good news is if you're responsible, that means you're in control and you can change it. And so there's like two sides to that, right? It's like, oh, I don't like the way that feels that I'm responsible for this life that I'm not in love with. It's like, but if I'm responsible, that means I can do something about it. It's in my control and I can consume the right material, surround myself with the right people, take the proper action and move in any direction I want to move. And I remember hearing that, not just hearing, but once I first locked it in and understood it, I was like, man, this is powerful.
so powerful. Like as you were saying that, I just started thinking about, as I became aware of that too over the last few years. And I keep saying the last few years because I think, probably in the middle of COVID was when I really realized a lot of these things. And I kind of, you know, you had a lot of time by yourself. You were a lot of time to think, a lot of time, I mean, I went through lockdowns and crazy stuff. And you're sitting there and you're processing stuff, right? And I remember realizing like if I don't take responsibility for my future and not just my future family, then who's going to do that? Nobody's coming to save me, you know? And so, I mean, part of that was me going like, I don't trust the leadership of the country that I live in, so I'm going to move to another country. I don't think many people maybe ever get to that place. Some people do. I think 10% of Canadians have left the country now, but like I was one of those people. I was just like, I gotta if things are gonna change, like if I want things to change, if I don't want to be in this environment, I gotta change my environment. But it also comes back to like even bigger than that. I think we have been subjected to this idea of we're victims for so long. And so many people, man, are programmed as a victim. Like, well, why can't you do that? Well, because of this person did this, or that person, or the government, or circumstances. It's like, dude, we're not a victim of the circumstances around us. We're the creators of our own reality.
Yeah,
That's good. I should write that one down.
you should write
Um,
that down.
but it's
Yeah,
we're not victims of what's going on around us. Like we can create our own reality, and I really believe that. I think for most, going back to talking about like the guys that I coach, it's like if you're blaming your wife or you're blaming your kids or you're blaming your job for the fact that you can't eat right, go to the gym, stop drinking, stop the sugar, stop the, being dehydrated, stop, being depressed, and you're blaming your wife and kids, it's like, dude, like you chose to ask that girl to marry you. You chose to put a baby inside of her. Like you chose all those things. Like yeah, it's your responsibility. And now I'm getting fired up talking about this. Maybe we're hitting a vein here. But it's like because that used to be me. Like I used to literally be like, oh, I can't do this because of whoever or whatever was going on around me. And we've lived in this society for so long of this victim mentality, and now you have, you know, um, call it the, certain, world leaders, let's just say, or the, the people that run the world, let's just say, they're perpetuating it. They want to make it even more and more and more where like everything's offensive and everything is racist and everything is this and don't say that because oh well this person's a victim, like they got you got to be careful. And then the reality is like you know the more that I guess the more that I took responsibility for my situation, my life, and everything around me, the happier that I've become because I've realized that like I have power. Like I actually have power to change my life and I have power to change me. And I think that's what we got to get back to, man, because that's the underlying cause of all of that stuff. Like what Jim Rohn talks about is so true. And we just I think that we need to, like I said, I mean, if we could create a school, like a high school, where you could have people just sit and watch a Jim Rohn. We used to watch Samuel L. Jackson movies in English class and then write essays about, well, what was the symbolism in the movie and how does that relate? And it's just like, dude,
Was
what?
was it
Like,
was it Snakes on a Plane?
no, no,
I'm
no.
just
It
joking. I'm
was
just joking.
oh man, I can't even remember the name of the movie, but it was, we get indoctrinated with just
Yeah,
so much useless crap over the years,
yeah,
and then we get to a point where like, well, no wonder we're confused and our life's a mess. It's because we haven't learned these things that we need to learn, and we're looking at everyone else around us and our, the people in our life. Like I hear that all the time. People blaming their wife and kids why they can't get their diet right, and I'm like, dude, you're the one that's should be leading the charge. Like you're the one that should be saying, hey, here's the standard. And I think that I think you kind of just you hit a chord there with what you were saying. I got a little fired up about it.
no, man, that was fire. There's some clips in there for sure. Um, in talking about these things, there's three different ways I've heard this, and I think this is part of the RAS, but I've heard this three different times now, and it's this idea of paying the price, right? And so I'll present it these three ways. So I've heard, I think J.J. Watt is where I heard the original quote, which was, "Success is not owned; it's leased, and the rent is due every day." Right. So that was the first one. The second one, and I'm not a big movie guy. I'm not a big Marvel guy, but it was in a movie, Doctor Strange. I don't know if you've seen it.
Uh-huh. No, I haven't.
Okay. Okay. Well, I'm going to ruin the movie for everybody, including yourself. Actually, I won't. There's no spoiler here, but there's a line in the movie where something takes place where time was manipulated. And even though the outcome was good, and one of his apprentices says, the bill always comes due, right? That was the second time I heard it. And then I heard somebody say something to the effect of, you either pay now or you pay later. And if you pay later, it's probably going to cost you a lot more. And so those three things, when I put those together, it just makes me think about how true that is. Like we have to pay the price of success. So, like for instance, with working out, right? Paying the price is going to the gym every day and going for that walk every day and eating the right things. Like that's the price you pay to be healthy, to live a long life, to have vitality. Now, if you don't pay that price, the price you pay later with diabetes or heart disease or a short life or not being able to spend quality time with your family and friends or having a shorter life, right? The price you pay later is always higher. And same thing with investing in yourself or investing in your business or spending your time properly, spending time and courting your loved one or your wife or whoever, right? Like all those things, when you pay the price now, the investment is absolutely incredible. But if you don't pay the price now, the outcome can be absolutely terrible. So I think that's for me been a powerful illustration of there's times when we don't want to pay the price, and I think our mind plays a trick on us. Like I don't have to pay the price; it'll be okay. The bill always comes due. I think that's just kind of a powerful thing to think about and toss around.
No, you're 100% right, man, and I completely agree with everything you said. It's so interesting how we've kind of, I think, we keep touching on these different topics and these different subjects, and everything is like these are principles. These are like I went to a seminar one time called Higher Laws. Have you ever heard of Higher Laws?
Nope.
It was really cool. It was a a couple guys from Utah running this seminar. They were going across Canada. I got invited to it. And they talked about how, there's like the law of gravity, right? If I lift up, this cup, right? Shout out Ocean Builders, right? If I drop this, right, it's gonna break. And there's laws, in the universe, and there's laws and principles that we can follow. And when it comes to paying the price now or later, I think that it's like cause and effect, or the law of polarity, the law of planting seeds, harvesting. I think that for me, I was talking to somebody the other day, and they were saying, we were talking about assets, and I said, I think back to the investment conversation, it's like you're your greatest asset. I'm my greatest asset, but my second biggest, greatest asset is my network. It's the seeds that I've been planting for the last decade with people that I know, people I've met, people I've built relationships with, where one day, right, if I ever need something in China or India or pick a country, pretty good chance that I have a contact there and I know somebody there, and I'm not going to be, paying the price of like, oh my God, like this is going to be this, this situation is crazy and it's out of control. It's like, oh, I could just pick up the phone and I could make a call to, somebody, my friend Felix, and he's got, a business partner there that can just, get things done. It's like, that's the way that I think about paying the price now or later, is like, am I investing now in myself and in my network and, beyond that, in whatever you want, your body, your business, your mind, all these different things, to eventually one day you're not going to like be stuck in a situation. You're not going to have some type you're not going to be in a position where you're going to be like, man, I wish I would have, done this in the past. And it's interesting what you brought up too about, the when you said the word diabetes, and I was listening to Callie Means, who's now working with RFK Jr. on the Make America Healthy Again campaign, which I think is phenomenal. I love listening to RFK because he sounds like he smoked like 100 packs of cigarettes this morning. He's hilarious. But such a stud, like such a great guy, And RFK said, I've been back and forth with Callie and RFK listening to their stuff. Callie was talking about, how the food companies were actually purchased by the cigarette companies, and all the addiction engineers, just like there's addiction engineers for social media, there's addiction engineers for cigarettes. And those addiction engineers and scientists all got put on the task, put to the task of, we need to make food addictive. So the cigarette companies bought the food companies, then they made all this ultra processed food addictive. And then RFK said, well, yeah, when my uncle Ted Kennedy was the president, 6% of America had chronic disease. Today, 60% of America has chronic disease. And the highest spending rate, or the highest spending right now in America, is not on the military or wars or AI or whatever. It's actually on healthcare. And they're not spending money on going after the root cause of people's poor health and chronic disease. They're spending all the money on treating the chronic disease. Oh, you have this? Here's a drug. Spend this much money a month. And then the doctor, like Ozempic, right? I mean, I'm going to get fired up talking about this because it's so insane what's going on out there. But like, if a doctor puts someone on Ozempic, which now they're prescribing it to kids, right? Which basically it's like a liquid anorexia, right? You just keeps you from being hungry. Pharmaceutical. They're giving it to kids now, right? And the doctor gets $1,800 a month for prescribing that to every patient. So if a doctor's like, hey, I want to make an extra 20 grand a month, they'll just go prescribe Ozempic to, 10, 11 people. And people are going, oh, my doctor told me this is good for me, so I should do this. My doctor has my best interest in mind. And really, doctors are good people. Like nothing, I'm not hating on doctors. I'm just saying the system is so screwed up when it comes to, people are like, well, I didn't stay in shape. I didn't stay healthy. I got sucked into the processed food. I got addicted to all the sugar and the bad stuff I shouldn't be eating. And now here I am, and I'm overweight and I'm diabetic and I got high blood pressure and all this crazy stuff going on. The number one leading cause of death in the United States is heart disease, right? And the leading cause of death among heart surgeons and cardiologists. Their leading cause of death is suicide. So think
Wow.
about that, right? Like, it's such a crazy world that we live in, man. And this is why this topic of like pay the price now, it's not, again, it's not a negative thing. It's not like paying the price. Some people could say, oh, that sounds, they have a negative story around paying the price, or they have a negative story around the emotional attachment to paying the price might be something that's, traumatic. But the reality is paying the price could just be, instead of eating cereal for breakfast and bread and jam, and Pop Tarts, like have some eggs, have some avocado, have some fruit, have some honey in your coffee instead of freaking, processed creamer. Like, that's paying the price, but it's not even that hard to do. It's just that you have to decide, like, hey man, I'm gonna take charge of me and control the controllables in my life. And it's those little small things, right? It's like start with making your bed, and then, everything else in the day you're stacking, like you said, you're stacking those wins.
Yeah, for sure, man. And I think I'm gonna have to start getting some bees going in the backyard because you put me up on the honey, and man, I'm going through honey like crazy. I love honey in my coffee now, and
Oh
I
yeah.
really enjoyed the flavored creamers in my coffee. It was something like I looked forward to every morning,
Oh yeah.
knowing that it was bad for me. And
Uh-huh.
then when I replace that with honey, man, it's like I don't miss it at all. Honey's the bomb.
So I was listening to Dr. Paul Saladino, who, he's very polarized and gets a lot of hate online, but I love the guy. He lives in Costa Rica, which is, I can almost probably see his place from here. It's so crazy how you listen to a guy like that and he says stuff like, honey is a superfood with like 1,200 compounds or something in it. And then you go break down, like if you got a list of every compound and everything that was in natural raw honey, bro, it's a superfood. Like, you read the Bible, and the if you Google how many times is honey mentioned in the Bible, like, it's insane.
Hmm.
And it's, same with red meat. Like, red meat, which has been demonized and hated on. Like, I remember when the whole vegan thing was like all over Netflix. It was like, well, you're going to be the strongest, you're going to be like the world's strongest man. You're going to be like all these NFL players, these Olympic athletes, if you go vegan. And then they had all these guys do these documentaries. Did you ever watch those?
I've seen some of the results from that. People that went vegan and then ended up going carnivore, and like comparing the two, it's pretty crazy.
Well, these guys, it's like they're all on there and they're real people and they're promoting, but it's like they're promoting this veganism thing. But then when you really look at like what's the agenda, who's making these films, who's funding this stuff, right? It's marketing, man. It's marketing to get us to stop eating meat, because red meat has, again, like 1,000 different healthy compounds in it, collagen and all these different vitamins and minerals and, healthy fats and proteins and all this stuff. It's like, but for years, people were like, oh, you shouldn't eat red meat because it causes inflammation. It's just, it's nuts, man. And I don't claim to be an expert on this. I just love getting these conversations started because I'm learning so much, and I've applied so much of this stuff in my life to where it's like, yeah, I've been eating red meat for like a year, and I've never felt like I've been in better shape or had more energy or my body's responded so well to it. Where if you look back 3 years ago when I was a vegan, like, I was a chubby vegan, it's
That's crazy. You know what's funny is if you follow the money, it usually tells you something, right? So I've heard the same thing about eggs. Like, oh, if you have too many eggs, and now they're saying, well, actually, that's not a bad cholesterol; it's a good cholesterol, and right, like they're figuring all these things out. But yeah, we get told we get sold, not told, we get sold these stories on what's good and bad for us, right? Like milk, all our lives, you should be just pounding milk, right? Like milk's so good for you, and then you find out how much sugar's in milk and all these different things, and it's wild, man. It's wild. So it's part of the journey, though, right? It's like deciding to pay attention, deciding to start looking at those things, and you've helped me out with that a lot, with trying to move away from processed foods, and really thinking about what I'm putting in my body and the impact that it has and how it makes me feel.
totally, man. It's crazy, and I think that's where my perfect grocery list came from, because over the last few years, like, I've been testing and trying different foods and going like, okay, when I eat this, how does my body respond? How does my body look? How do I feel? How's my energy? Does this make me feel anxious? Like, if you want to if you want to feel anxious and depressed, just eat a bunch of processed food from the store with 20 ingredients in it. And all of a sudden you're like, man, I got brain fog and I'm kind of like, a little bit paranoid and feeling a little, my I can't seem to focus. It's like that's by design. And so anyway, I think, bro, when you look at the perfect grocery list, it's generally almost 90, probably 98% of it is just one ingredient, single ingredient whole foods, you know? And that is one thing I love about living down here in Latin America, like where I live in Panama, I'm in the agriculture and farming province that supplies the entire country, supplies parts of Costa Rica with food. Colombia, Colombia has a lot of farming, and Costa Rica does too. But there's just so much fresh quality produce. Sorry, dairy. Like I go to a dairy farm and I get they call it leche crudo, which is raw milk. I get, raw cheese, three different kinds of cheese. I get mantequilla, which is butter, right? It's like a sweet raw butter. Like the way when I tasted this butter for the first time, I'm like, dude, I didn't even know butter tasted like this. I thought butter tasted like this, which is, grew up on margarine and all this other stuff. And it's just you get to a point where I guess you can decide like, okay, if I'm gonna back to taking responsibility for yourself, it's like if one of the controllables that I can control is what goes into my mouth every day, and you're the only one that can control that, then what am I eating and what's in it? And why am I feeling a certain way, or why does my body look a certain way? Well, it all comes down to the diet and the food. And so like I was saying, being in Latin America has allowed me to really become a lot healthier because the quality of the food here is phenomenal. I get fresh stuff that was picked that morning versus something in Canada. You're eating blueberries that have been there for 3 weeks in Costco and they just taste like freaking, chalk. But that's how that's all people know. Like people don't know, they don't have any other option in those places. And so, I think that the more that we can bring awareness to this stuff, right? Like maybe one day this episode of this podcast will have millions of views, hopefully, right? People just whoever's watching this stuff, they're getting, that they're being reminded of like, you know what? I do need to get high quality food. I do need to eat single ingredient whole foods. I do need to, take care of myself because you only get one body, man. It's like people say you have a million problems until you have a health problem, then you have one problem. And
Right.
and it's like preventative health. Like stay healthy now and continue to be healthy so that you don't have to, look down the road later and be like, oh man, like now I got all these issues. You can change it right now, no matter how old you are or where you live. There's a way around, that to find just doing the best that you can possibly do. I think it just comes down to deciding like, I'm going to do the best I can do with the grocery budget I have, the location I'm in. One thing about the perfect grocery list is you can get those foods anywhere in the world. Any supermarket, anywhere, any country in the world, you should be able to. Any country that I've been to, you can get those foods, which was part of the design of it as well.
Awesome. Awesome. So I gotta ask you this because I know people are going to wonder. So you obviously been ultra successful in business. You live in what looks like absolutely paradise. You're in this pod here over the ocean, which I'm hoping to put a picture or video up. I think you have some stuff of it on Instagram. It looks awesome, man. And then obviously you've really honed your mental health. You've sculpted your body, so you have all this success in all these different areas of your life. Really holistic success in a lot of ways, right? And so something that comes to mind for me, and I'm sure a lot of listeners are going to want to know, is, a lot of people experience burnout, whether it's for working out, if it's for eating right, if it's for business, right? People go through these different phases in their life or in cycles in their business, or again, with going to the gym where they're like, man, how long do I have to do this for? Or I just don't feel like it today, or I don't know if I want to do this thing, right? People have this feeling of like almost being trapped, right? Like, what do you do when you have those moments of weakness, or when you're feeling like, man, I really don't want to work out today, or I don't want to build my business today. Like how do you compensate for when you feel like that?
So it's a great question, and I think burnout. I always think of it as wearing yourself down, and it's interesting. I just got to get a charger for the laptop, so we'll get that plugged in while we're having this conversation. Just goes in right here, and then you can plug it in underneath the table. Okay, perfect. No, that's not going to work. No? No, that's just a dongle for the mic. So if you plug in one end here, there's a long cable in my top of my backpack. Sorry.
No, you're good.
You know, in The Strangest Secret by Earl Nightingale, and I keep plugging that book, he says one of the keys that he gives you like 5 or 6 keys in the book. One of them is stop running yourself down. I think his exact words are stop running yourself down. So for me, one thing that I've decided to do is Sunday, and I got this. I mean, if you ever forget, like you said, just listen to Jim Rohn because he talks about this too. Sunday is a day where you should be resting, spending time with family, spending time with loved ones. Getting extra rest, meaning like take a nap, sleep in the morning, like do that kind of stuff. But take a day off during the week. I remember in my business when I first started with the company, I had this goal of like I got to hit this rank by this day. Like that was my goal. And I worked for 7 months straight. I did not take a single day off. And the story is so, and it's funny now to laugh about it, but it was, I mean, you're in this grind, right? It's this whole hustle culture, which I don't resonate with hustle culture. I tried for a while, to be like, okay, just hustle and grind and all that stuff. Not that you don't want to do the work, you have to do the work, but it's like, the story is I worked 7 months straight, calls every day, events every week, like, really just pushing. And right here, there's like a power bar. There's a black power bar. No? Let me try. 1 second, Dusty.
Yeah, you can pop up if you need to. It's all good.
No, it has to go into the. 1 second, Dusty.
Yeah, we'll look out your window here.
It's charging now.
It's charging?
Yeah.
We are powered up. Thank you.
Yeah, that gave us an opportunity to take a look out at the ocean, man. I was vibing there.
Yeah, man, it's pretty special here.
Yeah, it looks like it.
It's a little gray right now, but when it's bright blue sky, it's pretty epic. But
yeah. So you were talking kind of about like the grind, the hustle culture. You were 7 months straight.
7 months. Yeah. I was just saying that telling you that story about, I remember I was 7 months in, hadn't taken a day off. And I remember I was in Red Deer in Alberta and I'm driving and I had no idea where I was driving to. I was just driving. And I remember just kind of realizing like, I'm not going to a meeting. I'm not going to meet anyone. I'm not going to buy anything. I'm not going to the gym. I was just driving because I was so aimless. I was just like aimlessly driving around and I was so burnt out and I was so worn down and so tired, and just mentally just like zapped, and I'll never forget that because it's like, I mean, that's how people fall asleep at the wheel. That's how people, end up having accidents or doing something that you're going to regret later. And I think that over the years, I've just, I've kind of come to the realization of you can work and you can do everything that you need to do. And there are daily non-negotiables, when it comes to, say, your nutrition or your hydration, right? Like drink your 4 liters of water, drink, maybe it's two liters of water to start, right? But drink the water, like eat the way you should be eating, do the things that you need to do as non-negotiables. But on a Sunday or on whatever day you decide to take off, right, that works for you. For me, it's Sundays now, just put your phone on airplane mode, and see how freeing that is. Like one of the things that's freed me more than anything is I do probably between 10 and 12 hours a day of no phone. where like say from 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night, like my last calls are usually over by about 9:30, sometimes 10. I'll turn my phone on airplane mode and it won't go back on until 9 or 10 the next day. I'll wake up in the morning and I will, I drink my water with mineral salt. I have my coffee. I do my, my gratitude journal. I write down, some goals and things I'm working towards, which is just a daily habit. And then I actually in the morning I'm just doing some reading, and I'm focusing on, okay, what are the things I got to get done today? What are the big, things that I got to take care of? And kind of pre-playing that in my head or thinking through what I'm supposed to be doing that day before I turn my phone on. Because as soon as you turn your phone on, I think the reason most people are burnt out is because they're just on their phone 10 hours a day, 12 hours a day, right? And then it's on all night. So it's people texting them all night, social media notifications going off in the middle of the night. People wake up in the morning, they're not even out of bed, they're on their phone, and you're in reaction mode. You're literally reacting to the world around you, and you never get that time of like, okay, I'm shutting that off and it's just me right now. So that's helped me a lot, taking the Sundays off, and then the airplane mode on the phone has been a game changer as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I know that I've heard some different mentors talk about we only have so much energy, right, to spend, and let's say for a given day. And so when your focus and your energy is pulled in all these different directions, as soon as you wake up, it's really, really hard to stay on track and not get burnt out, right? You get decision fatigue, you get all these things that kick in. And so I think that's a great tip, man, is to, especially in the morning, keep your phone on airplane mode. Don't start checking messages as soon as you wake up. You know, have your rituals and your routines. And I wanted to share one of my rituals with you since you were talking about kind of your morning ritual. So I just started doing this maybe a couple of years ago. And what's interesting is it's a leaving the gym ritual that I do, and it speaks to gratitude, which I want to kind of pivot to what you just mentioned. And so when I leave the gym, there's a hand sanitizer right by the door that you put your hand under, and it's automatic. And we don't have to get into like if hand sanitizer is healthy because it's probably not. But after I'm using those weights and everything, and I feel better about it. But that's not why I do it. I do it because you've probably experienced this. If you have water or hand sanitizer or anything wet on your hand and you're outside, like you just feel more, right? Like you feel the wind, you feel the air. And so what I do is I put some hand sanitizer, I rub my hands together, and I look both ways first. I close my eyes. It feels great when the sun's out. And I look up, and while I rub my hands together, I take a deep breath. And my thought is in us. I breathe out through us. And then I put my hands out kind of up like this, and I say all around us. So in us, through us, and all around us. And that's kind of my gratitude and acknowledgement for the day about God, right? Like God is in us, He works through us, and He's all around us. And when I have that thought daily when I'm leaving the gym, man, I feel like for a kind of set amount of time, I'm locked in, right? Because I have such gratitude, knowing that He's in us, knowing that He's working through us, and that He's all around us and everything, and when you have that thought in your mind and you have that gratitude, man, it can really change your state.
Dude, it's so powerful. I love that. I love that. It's true, man. Like, I think that the more that we understand and the more that we connect with our spiritual side, and I believe, we were created by God, and we were created to create, and we're created with a purpose, and that's really the foundation of what I believe. And then from there, like, you know, studying and learning more about, the principles and the things that God's, set up in the world, set up from the beginning of time. Gratitude and just being in that state of thanksgiving that's been transformational for so many of us, man. And it's such a different way to look at the world. It's such a different lens to look at the world through than looking at the world through, well, what do I not have, as opposed to what I do have. Or, the one meditation I have on the playlist, I think I sent you in the program, is the Joe Dispenza meditation, where he says, put your hand over your heart and give yourself grace and love and compassion, and then
All right. Rich had a system crash, so he's getting it fired back up. He'll join us back in 1 second. So, man, I'm so excited about this. It's been a long time in the making. I've owned these domains for liftothersup.com and .org for, I don't know, probably going on 10 years now. And these two ideas of one, lift others up, and two, let's get better together, have been kind of weaved in everything I've done. And I'm not sure what it was going to look like or how it was going to happen. But I decided that it had been long enough. So I wanted to kick things off with this Lift Others Up podcast. And recently, having worked with Richard, it's just had a huge impact on me. And I wanted to have him on as the first official guest. And he's helped lift me up. And kind of the one thing I want to touch on while we're waiting for Rich is this idea that no matter where you're at, no matter what your life looks like you have influence, whether you know it or not. And so I kind of feel a responsibility because of that influence to lift ourselves up and to turn around and lift other people up. And, we do that by, again, consuming personal development, by working on ourselves, and then by turning around and sharing those same things with other people. And whatever you've been through in life uniquely equips you to help other people go through those same things. And so, man, I'm just pumped. I'm excited to finally be kicking this thing off. I already have some incredible guests lined up. Again, kicking off with Rich is just awesome, man. He's such a great guy. He's calling right now. Let's see what happened.
Yeah, we're out in the middle of the ocean here, and we got to. I had to get some water, anyways. So we switched devices, and we're back in action.
We're back rolling. Well, I think we were kind of around gratitude. So there's and rituals, but I want to bring up one more thing about gratitude. So just to get us back in the flow here, behind me, there's two signs, and you're not going to be able to see them, unfortunately, with the tight shot. But one says "Dare to Dream," and the other one says "Live in the Moment." And so I was at, I don't know if you guys have Salvation Armies, but it's basically like a thrift store, a Goodwill. Yeah. And I saw these signs. I think they were like $4 a piece or something. And they had these gaudy gold frames. And I saw them. And then I was thinking about them. Like I left, I didn't buy them. And I was thinking about them. And I got home and I was like, I've struggled with this idea. My brother taught me this saying, and it's, the answer to polarity is almost always paradox, right? So it's like, if it's this or that, usually the answer is both and. And so I've kind of struggled with, all right, how do you dare to dream and live in the moment? And so I thought about this so much, and it's something I've struggled with. And so I went back. I was like, man, if these are still at this store, I'm going to buy them. So I ended up buying them, and I painted the frames black just because I like the way it looks a little better. And when we get a wider shot, people will be able to see it. But, I think they're connected. They sound like kind of something you can't do both. But I think they're connected because, I think it's important to dream. And I think it's especially important for people to have like a bright future, right? To have a good vision of their future. And I think doing that properly actually allows you to have more gratitude and live in the moment. Would you agree with that?
I do agree. I'll give you another take on that, or how I see it in my head. So I look at, there's the past, right, where you've come from, then there's the present, and then there's the future. So it's like 1, 2, 3. So it's three parts. I always used to wake up in the morning thinking about the past. And some days it still happens to me. I wake up in the morning and I'm thinking about the past, and I have to immediately go to, thank you for what I have right now. Thank you, God, for all these things. And I go into this gratitude practice, because as soon as you start focusing on gratitude, it's like a pattern interrupt. But that word that you use, the bright future, it's interesting. I was actually at that Higher Laws event I was telling you about, and the guys were talking about how in relationships, one of the best ways to maintain a good relationship with someone, whether it's your kid, your wife, a business partner, friend, whatever, is create a bright future with them. So basically the concept is very simple. It's like, you just have to have something to look forward to with that person, whether it's, hey, we're going out this Friday, or we're going on that ski trip, or we're going out to the sea pod in 2 weeks, or whatever it is, and you have that thing to look forward to, it's like now you're going to that place, to that bright future together. And I was like, man, that's so easy and so simple to put into practice. But it's like the same with, I think, with us as people. That's one thing I've learned about with meditation so much. Like, the word meditation actually means to become familiar with. So when you meditate, you're becoming familiar with the vision of the future that you're creating. You're becoming familiar with the person that you're becoming. So it's like, for me, like, the whole enjoy and live in the moment thing has been kind of the last, I don't know, man. It's been, I struggle with understanding deja vu. But I have deja vu weekly, if not sometimes every other day. Sometimes, I mean, for a while I was having deja vu every day, and I'm like, I've been here before. And there's people that would say, like, oh, you're in your, this is your second life or your third life. And I don't buy that. What I think it is I think that I visualized this moment, or I created this moment in my mind before it happened, whether it was years ago or whether it was, months back or whatever, months or years before. You're meditating, you're visualizing, you're thinking like, okay, I'm seeing myself here, or I'm seeing myself doing these things. And then I believe that God puts us on this path where all of a sudden it's like, now you're in that moment, like you're enjoying and living in that exact moment that you created by focusing on the future. So to me, it's like this whole, it's this whole idea of like, you got to shut off these memories and thoughts of the past. Like, learn from the past, learn from mistakes, but you have to stop thinking about, like, you ever have those friends and they're still talking about their divorce from 10 years ago, or
Yeah,
or they're still talking about that car accident that they had, or they're still talking, this person died and they still have never got over it, or
I was guilty
whatever.
of
And
that
like,
for a long
I
time.
I'm sympathetic. Like, I'm a sympathetic person, but at the same time, it's like, as soon as you stop that behavior and that programming, and you go, let me focus on my future, which for me, meditation has been the biggest key to that. I've completely changed the way that I think through meditating, which I only started in 2021. I'm only 3 years into meditation, but it's like, like today, I'll give you an example. I'm enjoying the moment. I'm here on the sea pod. I'm in this beautiful place, and I'm enjoying being here. I'm grateful, and I spent quite a bit of time this morning just being grateful and being in gratitude for where I am. But then I went into this meditation earlier today, where I was thinking about, and I was literally kind of programming and creating this moment of, like, one of my dreams is to give my mom a brand new car, right? And in my meditation, I picked out the car, I picked out the color, I picked out the leather color, I picked out the spot I'm going to give it to her. I planned the whole thing of how I'm going to do it, who's going to be there, who's going to film it, so that, me and my mom driving in the car. And I literally went there in my head emotionally, and experienced the emotions of what I'm going to feel when I do that. Which, if you're listening to this and that sounds crazy, whatever, I know it might sound woo-woo to you, but I'm telling you, like, this is what I do now. And when I get to live in that moment and enjoy that moment, when that moment comes, I'm probably going to have that deja vu. I'm probably going to have that, like, oh my God, like, I've been here before, because I have. So it's like you're doing both. You're enjoying the moment where you are, but you're also living and living your dreams and dreaming big, and creating that future.
Absolutely, absolutely. I've been thinking about gratitude a lot, and I had this conversation with a friend, and that was, I feel like gratitude journals are great. Talking about gratitude is great, but I also feel like there's a higher form of gratitude, and it's like taking action on your gratitude. So I'll explain what I mean. So I think in the church they might call it like stewardship, right? Like being a good steward. And so if you're grateful for like your car, like you're probably going to keep it clean and wash it, and you know what I'm saying, shine up the rims. And if you're grateful for your health, right? then you should be a good steward of that health, and you should be working out, and you should be eating the right foods. And if you're grateful for your business and your income, then you should be working on those things, right? So I think gratitude in action can just be a multiplier. You know what I mean? And what's really cool is when you were telling that story about your mom and saying like, hey, some people might think this is, you know, like out there. I'll tell you what, man, I believe beyond the shadow of a doubt that you have to see it in your mind first, right? And the more clear you can get that, and the more masterful of a way you can paint that, and just really paint that vision. I mean, it just becomes so much more likely to happen. Not just because the law of attraction and the RAS, but because you're creating your future in your mind. And you might know more about this or be able to express it more eloquently, but I do believe that there is something about these positive thoughts that it's like the same feeling. Your brain has those same feelings as if you're actually experiencing it. And man,
Yeah.
that's powerful, man. I love that story, and I can't wait to hear when you have that deja vu.
Yeah, man. No, absolutely. I totally agree. It's like the positive thinking is one thing. Like one of the first things I learned in personal development was the positive mental attitude. It's called PMA. So our company actually, we would do these PMA, like this PMA routine, and PMA was like blasted everywhere. Like you go in the offices at the company, you just see PMA like on these posters, and I just got so ingrained in me like positive mental attitude. But there's a difference between thinking positively and actually taking action on what you know you should be doing, or taking action to take your business to the next level, or taking action to write that post or whatever. One of the actions for me that has been, um I made a commitment to myself that I'm going to write every day, because going back to when I was a little kid, I always loved writing. And my mom, she's so cute. I don't know why I keep bringing her up on this podcast. I guess I just, she's been a big part of my life. She still has like essays and stories that I wrote when I was a kid, and she pulls them out sometimes just to show me, and I think it's hilarious. But it's cool because it's always been something that I've enjoyed doing. But now, like I wake up in the morning, like we were talking about, before you turn your phone on in the morning, like what are you doing? And I'm trying to write every day, and I'm whether it's one sentence or whether it's a lot of times I write so much that it's like way too much to put into like a post, because you can only have so many characters on a social media post. But I heard a guy say the other day, like writing is the most purest form of communication, because writing is something that we're reading books from hundreds and thousands of years ago that people wrote. And so that's one action for me that I've decided, like, okay, yeah, I'm grateful, yes, I'm going to think positively, yes, I'm going to visualize, but what am I going to do about it? And that's just one daily discipline of like, I'm going to write to them and take my laptop, I'm going to spend time, I'm going to put my thoughts and my ideas on paper or on a screen because I write on a computer. But that type of thing for me is just one example.
Yeah, for sure. That's awesome, man. So I want to kind of looking at the clock here, and we got some time, but if we were starting to wind down here, I just want to make sure that you have the opportunity. If there's like a main message or something that's been on your heart that you want to share. Sometimes when we're preparing for stuff like this or thinking about what we're going to talk about, we take some notes or things you've experienced in your writing. If there's anything that you just feel a tug that you want to share that we haven't covered, I'd love to throw that out to you. And if it's not there right now, we can come back to it. But what's going on in your heart and your mind, man, that you want to share with the people?
I mean, I think we've covered so much already on the show. Like I've really had the opportunity to, go into some of this stuff that I've been that I'm passionate about and that I've been studying and researching, and I appreciate you having me on, man, and giving me the opportunity to share some of this stuff, because you know all this stuff it's like you said, it kind of stacks on each other. I think the fundamental stuff we've covered about, you know taking responsibility for your life, getting yourself into alignment, creating the right habits, falling in love with accountability and discipline, controlling the controllables. Like these are all, these are big topics, but at the same time, these are just like simple principles and things that I've learned that have been transformational in my life. And now, I love helping other people do the same thing. And what's cool is that I guess, one of the messages for me that I've been, I guess I've been sharing online for years now, but something that somebody said to me one time. I remember where I was. I was in Tyler, Texas. You ever been to Tyler, Texas?
I have.
You have. Okay.
Yeah.
So there's not much going on out there, right? But I had a friend and she said to me, I see greatness in you. She's like, Rich, she's like, I see greatness in you. And I was probably 17, 18, right? I was a kid. And nobody had ever said that to me. My parents told me they love me all the time. My mom said to me a few times, growing up, like, you can be anything you want to be and all that, like just encouraging words. But like my friend literally says to me, like, I see greatness inside of you. And I've posted this now and I've talked about this now on social media for years, occasionally, every few months, like it comes back to me. I'm like, we need to remind people, like, if you're watching this show, you need to know that like you do have a level of greatness inside of you. You were created to do something great with your life. Like that's what I believe. I believe that all of us, we were created by a creator. And if you're created, if you're a creator and you're going to create something, it means that there's a purpose to it. And I think that's maybe the second part of what I want to say is like, number one, you have greatness inside of you. Number two, you were created with a purpose. So when you find out what that purpose is, and when you find out your purpose, and you have to search for it. Your purpose doesn't necessarily just, it's not just written on your door one day and all of a sudden you walk home and there's an envelope and you open it up and it's a piece of paper saying, hey Dusty, this is your purpose in life. It's like you have to search for that purpose and find it. But when you find it, you know, understand that part of our, I think that part of our reason for being here on this planet, part of the reason why we're here is to help other people, to love other people, to bring value, to serve other people. And how we do that is through, finding out what our purpose is and then living that out. But it's all tied together. It's such a, I think it's such a beautiful thing. It's so, for me, it's inspiring to know that I was created for a reason and that I can tap into a level of greatness. Like if you look at the greatest people on the planet, or the great people that do great things in sports or in achievements, right? Like they have all these accolades or they do these amazing things, they win these championships. It's like somebody told them once that they were great. Somebody told them once that they had that in them, and then they started to believe it. And I think that all this stuff comes down to like one of the things that I love getting the opportunity when I'm coaching people is like say to them like, I want to encourage you that like, you're doing an incredible job and you're making great progress and you're keep up the good work. But I want to encourage you that like, you're great, like you're powerful, like you need to tap into that and you need to believe, have the belief in yourself, the self belief that you can do more than you're doing now and that you can rise above whatever's in your way, whatever challenges or obstacles are in your way. And if you don't believe it, believe that I believe it, right? It's like in sales, right? People say, well, it doesn't matter if the customer believes it, they have to believe that you believe it.
That's right.
And you can borrow belief from other people because sometimes it's like we're sitting there, man. I mean, you might be listening to this and you might be in a pretty low spot. You might be, having a tough time in life right now, right? Mentally, physically, whatever's going on around you, you might be at rock bottom, but you can borrow my belief. If you don't believe it, you can borrow my belief that I believe it because I do. I truly, the other day I wrote down in my notes, it's so frustrating, seeing wasted talent, seeing somebody who's the most talented, most bright person, brilliant person, they got all this incredible potential and they're working some dead end job somewhere.
right? Doing some dead end, thing that they hate because they don't believe that they can actually that they could do something else. They don't believe that they could go and create anything. And it's like I call it wasted talent, but it's just like I see it all over the place. I meet incredible people all the time. Everywhere I go around the world, I meet just amazing people, and I go like, man, I mean, I worked some dead end jobs. I did some stuff that I hated doing growing up. I worked in places I didn't want to be because it's a means to an end. But it's like, you know, when you see someone and they go their whole life just doing the same routine and the same stuff, I think that we all we just have more potential and more greatness inside of us than we really believe maybe in the moment, and sometimes we just need someone to tell us.
No, that's awesome, man. I think I love that because that's what I kind of see for lift others up, right? Is this idea that it can be as simple as a kind word for somebody or an encouraging word for somebody. And I think that's where me and you really connect on is empowerment, right? This idea that like if somebody else is successful, it's not going to be because of me, but if I can just be a part of that story because, I shared something with them that got them in the right train of thought or, spoke a positive word, that person that told you have greatness inside you, right? Like you don't have the life you have because of that person, but that thing they shared with you did, spark something inside you, right? So um, I just love that just by speaking positive things to people, by encouraging people, by even just telling someone you love them, that you're proud of them, that they have greatness, all those things, man, can have profound impact, right? And we might not know it at the time. And I think I shared this with you. I did a kind of like a weekly check-in on Facebook for a couple of years. Every Wednesday, I call it the midweek check-in. And over that 2 years, I got 3 messages from people just like thanking me and sharing the impact I had on them. And I was having a conversation with a friend earlier today, kind of prepping for this podcast, and he was talking about these measurables he has, right? Like, oh, I shoot this video, and then I get caught up in like looking at the views and the comments, and how much action it's getting. And I said, why don't we focus on action, like the action we're taking, and the impact. And I think if we focus on the action, the impact will come. You know, like if you focus on just speaking love and positivity to people and encouraging people, like the impact's going to happen. And you might not even get to see it. Like I don't know if you're still in contact with that person, but or if you've shared that with them. But sometimes you probably never even get to know the impact that something you said had on somebody. And I know that's true for me. There's been people that have said stuff to me. I remember I was at a conference once, and one of the other leaders in our company who was way higher up than me was knew I was speaking at a conference, and she just encouraged me. She said, "Oh, you're gonna do. I can't wait till you talk. You're such a great speaker. I learned so much when you talk, and you just have a way with people." And man, that just lit me up. And when I went on stage, I felt like $1,000,000, and just that encouraging word. You know what I mean? And everybody needs that. I don't care if you're the most successful person, if you're down in the dumps, like everybody needs that. It's like nourishment for the soul. So I love that was your answer, man, because I think that's something we definitely share is just that want to lift others up, that want to empower other people. And I just want to tell you, man, you're doing that for a lot of people already. You've definitely done it for me, so I appreciate you for that, man.
Hey man, thanks for giving me the opportunity to work with you. It's been incredible, and inviting me to have a conversation today. It's an honor, man. It really is, and I'm excited because I think that as we continue to have these conversations, and as we continue to bring awareness to some of these things, which is really all we're doing, right? We've increased our awareness, and as we continue to do that, we're increasing the awareness of other people. I mean, that's why people love YouTube and they love listening to podcasts, and I mean, we all do. It's knowledge and information. But I think the key word that you said is encouragement. I think that the way that the devil will start to break somebody down is they get discouraged. So I heard this a long time ago, and it stuck with me. Is that when the devil can get you discouraged, right? Where you start to feel like you start to second guess yourself. You start to, you start to feel unworthy. You start to feel like maybe you're paying the price for mistakes you made in the past, or you've done too many wrong things, or whatever it is, you've made too many mistakes. That discouragement starts to break you open. It starts to crack you open, and then other things start to come in as well. But discouragement is that first initial weapon that the enemy uses to try to destroy us. And I think that if we can decide and commit that we're going to encourage each other and encourage other people, right? I love what Bob Proctor says. He says in the morning, if you want to raise your vibration, he says you got to send love, send some encouragement or some love or some gratitude to a couple of people every day. And nobody does it every day. Like if anyone says like, oh, I do that every morning, they're lying, because there's days where you there's no way you could remember every single day. But I mean, try it one time, or try doing it 2-3 days in a row. You feel so good. Like you send someone love, just like, hey man, I appreciate you, I want to encourage you, I want to acknowledge you for who you are and what you're doing. That's such a cool text message to receive, but it's even cooler to send it out. And I think that as we continue to have these conversations, man, and as you continue to do your podcast, and now that this is going, and now that you're stepping into this, you're going to encourage a lot of people too, because there's so many people that are going to be blessed by just your voice and your message.
So, man, I appreciate that. And so, the two more things I want to get to, but I was thinking back to you saying like every day you posted something positive, right? It reminded me that um, being consistent creates confidence, and being inconsistent creates insecurity, right? So being inconsistent creates insecurity and that disappointment and that discouragement, and being consistent creates confidence. And a lot of people, say, well, how do you break out of something, right? Like, how do you break out of negative habits, or, if you're in a funk? And something I've learned time and time again, especially with you, is like, it's taking action, the action precedes the motivation. And so I think a lot of people are sitting around waiting to be motivated. They're looking for the right, the right podcast, the right video, the right book to get that motivation, but the action's got to precede the motivation. And so that's something I definitely love and wanted to share. So two things I want to kind of wrap with. So
Yeah.
the first thing is, I want to ask you, you're sitting there in Panama. That's still in Panama, the pod, right? In the ocean
Yeah.
there? Okay.
Yeah.
So you're sitting there in this amazing pod, which I'm hoping that we can put a video in the link, or we can put a picture up, because, man, it's absolutely amazing. And even when you're not in the pod, I mean, just where you're at, it's Boquete, right?
Yeah.
Where you're at there is it's just gorgeous, man. So you have this amazing life you've created with your business, with where you live, with the body you've built, all these different things that you've paid the price for to have this life. And so the question I want to ask you is, of everything that you have going on right now and in your life, if you had to pick like one thing you're most grateful for at this moment, what would that be?
To be honest, man, I'm gonna give you two. So one is the grace of God, because and I have to give God the glory for where I'm at in my life, because I really wouldn't be here, if it wasn't for Him. And I can tell you so many stories about times when you know um being in a dark place, or almost dying a couple different times, near death experiences, stuff like that. We'll have to do that for episode 2. But you know if we ever do this and come back to this show. But it's the thing that I guess I would say I'm most grateful for is the people in my life. I have the most amazing people in my life. I think of everybody that I know. I think that I have just my family, my friends, my girlfriend, my community, my team, my clients. Like I wake up every day, man, and it's like I'm just so grateful for the connections and the relationships and the people that I have in my life, because I think that's the most important thing in life. I think that everything we do is all motivated by whether it's a girl, or whether it's our family, or whether it's, our team, or whether it's our kids or whatever, you know, and I don't have kids yet, but I am motivated by my future, thinking about my future kids. You know, the people in our life, man, is really what matters. And it's at the end of the day, it's like, all the stuff. Like I posted this, I was talking about when I moved to Costa Rica, in 2021, and how the freest I've ever felt was when I got rid of all my stuff. I had spent the previous couple of years collecting as much stuff as I possibly could. And then in 30 days, I got rid of everything, and I felt so free. But I was just thinking about, how it's not the stuff that matters. It's not the things that we accumulate. It's the people that, are in our life, the relationships we have. And that's what makes life so beautiful, man. So that's what I'm most grateful for.
Amen, brother. That's awesome. I love too is you could tell when you're talking to somebody just by the flow of the conversation. Like when we first started, you said like you're your most valuable asset. I'm my most valuable asset. Number two is your network, right? So it's all about people with you, which I love, and I couldn't agree more, man. Like it's the relationships. That's what life's about. Life's all about relationships, and starting from I believe God, a relationship with God. So that's awesome, man. So last thing wrapping up here. First of all, man, I'd be honored if you did come back, because I think we can continue this conversation, and it might have to be a couple more episodes. I don't know, man. Maybe keep this thing going. So I'm honored that you were a part of the first Lift Others Up podcast here. And to close, my last question for you is: in thinking about your network and those people that you love and care about, is there a particular person you can think of that you could say, man, you got to have this person on your podcast, right? That referral, like, all right, this guy's got to get on Lift Those Up podcast and share because he's had impact on my life, or this girl's had impact on my life. Who can you think of that would be, a next great guest for me?
So I've got a couple. I could give you a few. Now whether they'll have the availability to get on or not. You want me to give you their names right now?
Yeah, man. I mean, I feel like this is a chance for you to shout them out, and then also twist your arm a little bit to help me make that happen. You know what I mean?
Okay, so I've got a guy that if you could get him on, is just I already mentioned him earlier on the podcast. His name's Alex. Alex Morton. So he is somebody that I've learned so much from. And this guy is just, I mean, he's got it all, man. I mean, he's built an incredible life, and somebody that has impacted literally millions of people, including me. So if you can get him on, I would say, I mean, that would be an unbelievable guest. He was just on Gary Brecka a couple of weeks ago. And yeah, man, that would be fire.
Awesome. There's a second one I think you said. Who's number two?
So I've got a real good friend of mine who's become a business partner. Well, he started as a business partner, became a friend. Now that I think about it, but he's down in New Zealand, and he's just one of the most high energy people that I've ever met. I talk to him almost every day, and every time I talk to him, I get fired up. So he would bring great energy to the podcast. His name's Ty Stevenson.
Awesome. Alex and Ty. All right. Hopefully they'll see this, and we can put a little pressure on them, man, because that's what this is all about, is having people like yourself on, just people that have so much to give and share, and that are driven by empowerment, right? So, Rich, man, I just want to say thanks so much for what you've done for me personally with being a mentor, and thank you so much for taking your time to come on here and share that same energy and gift with everybody else that's listening to the podcast. So thank you so much, man. Love you. Appreciate you. And let's do this again soon.
Hey, you're welcome, man. Love you too. And thanks for having me on.